Wow! God bless the great state of Florida. I am thrilled to be with you today. Well, thank you, and I love you too. What an amazing thing. How many of y'all have watched the Republican debates? How fantastic is it that we have such an array of young, talented, dynamic candidates running for president? And what a contrast with the Democrats. You know, I think the first Democratic debate was Hillary and the Chipotle clerk. Well, no, actually, that's not fair. We can't forget about Bernie Sanders. So now the Democratic field consists of a wild-eyed socialist with ideas that are dangerous for America and the world, and Bernie Sanders. And I don't know if you heard, they announced new news. They changed the location for the next Democratic debate. They're going to have it at Leavenworth. Well, they wanted to make it easier for Hillary to attend. You know, all of us are here today because our country's in crisis. We're here today because we're bankrupting our kids and grandkids, because our constitutional rights are under assault each and every day, and because America has receded from leadership in the world, and it has made the world a much more dangerous place. And yet I'm here today with a word of hope and encouragement and exhortation to each of you. All across this country, all across the state of Florida, and all across the nation, people are waking up. And I'm here to tell you, help is on the way. So I want to ask everyone here to look forward. Look forward to January 2017. If I'm elected president, let me tell you what I intend to do on the first day in office. The first thing I intend to do is rescind every single illegal and unconstitutional executive action taken by this president. President Obama likes to say he's got a phone and he's got a pen. Well, you live by the pen, you die by the pen. And my pen has got an eraser. But sadly, the corruption's not been limited to the White House. It's extended across every agency of the federal government. The second thing I intend to do on the first day in office is instruct the United States Department of Justice to open an investigation into Planned Parenthood and these horrible videos. And to prosecute any and all criminal conduct by that organization. The third thing I intend to do on the first day in office is instruct the Department of Justice and the IRS and every other federal agency that the persecution of religious liberty ends today. That means that every serviceman and woman has the right to seek out and worship God Almighty with all of our hearts, minds, and souls, and their superior officer has nothing to say about it. That means that the Little Sisters of the Poor, a Catholic charity being persecuted by the Obama administration, will find that the case against them has been dismissed. The fourth thing I intend to do on the first day in office is rip to shreds this catastrophic Iranian nuclear deal. The single greatest national security threat facing this country is the threat of a nuclear Iran, and we need a commander-in-chief who will stand up in unequivocal terms and say, under no circumstances will the nation of Iran, led by a theocratic Ayatollah who chants death to America, under no circumstances will Iran be allowed to acquire nuclear weapons. The fifth thing I intend to do on the first day in office is begin the process of moving the American embassy in Israel to Jerusalem, the once and eternal capital of Israel. Now, you know, a lot of presidential candidates, both Democrats and Republicans, have made that same promise. And yet, inevitably, when they get to the White House, they don't do it. Because what happens is their team comes to them and they say, you know, if we do this, other folks in the Middle East will be really, really unhappy with us. Well, if you hadn't noticed, they're already pretty unhappy with us. And the single biggest difference between me and the other very, very fine men and women standing on that debate stage is that with me, when I tell you I'm going to do something, I'm going to do exactly what I said I would do. That's day one. There are 365 days in a year, 4 years in a presidential term, and 4 years in a second term. By the end of 8 years, there are going to be a whole lot of reporters and newspaper editors and journalists that have checked themselves into therapy. In the days that follow, I will go to Congress and we will repeal every word of Obamacare. We will pass common sense health care reform that makes health insurance personal and portable and affordable and keeps government from getting in between us and our doctors. By the way, what are these? Is Obama coming? In the days that follow, I will instruct the U.S. Department of Education, which should be abolished, I will instruct the Secretary of Education that Common Core ends today. In the days that follow, we will rebuild our military and we will honor the commitments made to our soldiers and sailors and airmen and Marines. And that includes protecting the rights of our servicemen and women to keep and bear arms and defend themselves. That means that the next time a jihadist walks into a recruiting center in Chattanooga, he's going to encounter the business end of firearms wielded by a dozen Marines. In the days that follow, we will finally secure the borders and end sanctuary cities. We will stop releasing criminal illegal aliens, and we will pass Kate's Law. In the days that follow, we will take on the EPA. And the CFPB. And the alphabet soup of federal agencies that have descended like locusts on small businesses, killing jobs all across this great country. You know, a few years back, I was out in West Texas. And I asked folks there, I said, what's the difference between regulators and locusts? I said, well, the thing is, you can't use pesticide on the regulators. And this old West Texas farmer, he leaned back, said, want to bet? And in the days that follow, I will go to Congress, and we will pass fundamental tax reform. We will pass a simple, flat tax. 10% for every American, so that every man and woman can fill out their taxes on a postcard. And when we do that, we should abolish the IRS. There are about 90,000 employees at the IRS. We need to padlock that building. Take all 90,000 and put them down on our southern border. Now, to our friends in the media, I say that somewhat tongue-in-cheek. But you know, if you think about it, sir, imagine you traveled thousands of miles in the blazing sun. You're swimming across the Rio Grande, and the first thing you see is 90,000 IRS agents. You'd turn around and go home too. Now, some of y'all may be thinking, all of this makes sense to me. It's basic common sense. Live within your means. Don't bankrupt our kids and grandkids. Follow the Constitution. But can it be done? Can we do it? You know, Scripture tells us there's nothing new under the sun. I think where we are today is very, very much like the late 1970s. Same failed economic policies. Same misery, stagnation, and malaise. The same feckless and naive foreign policies. In fact, the exact same countries, Russia and Iran, openly laughing at and mocking the President of the United States. Now, why is it that that analogy gives me so much hope and optimism? Because we know how that story ended. All across this country, millions of men and women rose up and became the Reagan Revolution. And it didn't come. Washington despised Ronald Reagan. By the way, if you see a candidate who Washington embraces, run and hide. It came from the American people, and it turned this country around. We went from stagnation to booming economic growth, to millions lifted out of poverty into prosperity and the American dream. We went from our hostages languishing in Iran to winning the Cold War and tearing the Berlin Wall to the ground. The reason I am so hopeful and optimistic is the same thing is happening again. We are seeing the American people wake up all over the country. You know, 6 months ago, when we launched our campaign for president, the New York Times promptly opined, Cruz cannot win because the Washington elites despise him. I kind of thought that was the whole point of the campaign. Look, if you think things in Washington are going great, that we need to keep headed in the same basic direction, just kind of fiddle around the edges, then I ain't your guy. On the other hand, if you think Washington is fundamentally broken, that there is a bipartisan corruption of career politicians in both parties that get in bed with the lobbyists and special interests and grow and grow and grow government, and we need to take power out of Washington and back to we the people. That is what this campaign is all about. Well, you know, the Times continued. They said, okay, maybe the grassroots are going to be with Ted. But he ain't going to have any money. All the money is controlled by those Washington elites, and the lobbyists are all supporting other candidates in this race. Well, a funny thing happened on the way to the forum. A few weeks back, all the campaigns filed their latest fundraising reports. Out of 17 Republican candidates who started this race, do you know which campaign has the most cash on hand, the most money in the bank? We do. You know how that happened? Because we've had over 450,000 contributions. People all over the country going to tedcruz.org, tedcruz.org, tedcruz.org. It's tedcruz.org. Our average contribution was $73. That is the power of the grassroots. I want to close with two things. One, a statement about the role of Florida. You know, Florida and Texas share a lot in common. We are southern states. We're states that are growing. We're states that understand that economic growth doesn't come from government. It comes from the men and women in this room. It comes from small businesses. It comes from entrepreneurs. It comes from people creating opportunity out of nothing. We're immigrant states, people coming from all over the world to our states. We also share a similar dislike for snow. I like to tell people you can't shovel sunshine. There is a reason people are fleeing high-tax, high-regulation states all over the country and coming to states like Florida and Texas, because jobs and opportunity and growth and the future is in states like Florida and Texas. Florida's primary is a critical time, and Florida can play a decisive role in ensuring that the next Republican nominee for president is a strong conservative. We're building a grassroots army across Florida and all across this country, and I ask everyone here, come and join us. The last thing I want to say is this. For every one of us here, freedom is not some abstract concept we read about in a school book. Freedom is real and personal in our lives, in our families. You know, for me, I think about my dad, who 58 years ago fled Cuba. He came to America with nothing. He was 18 years old. He had $100 sewn into his underwear. He couldn't speak English. He washed dishes, making 50 cents an hour. And he worked full time. He paid his way through school. He went on with my mother to start a small business. Today, my father is a pastor. He travels the country preaching the gospel. Now, my whole life, my dad has been my hero. But you know what I find most incredible about his story? How commonplace it is. Every one of us here, we have a story just like that in our backgrounds. Some of us, it's us. Others, it's our parents. Others, it's our great-great-great-grandparents. But what ties Americans together is every one of us, we are the children of those who risked everything for freedom. That is the fundamental DNA of what it means to be an American, to value liberty and opportunity above all else, and it is why I'm so optimistic, because we are not going to give up our freedom to an ever-growing federal government. You know, when I was a kid, my dad used to say to me over and over again, when we lost our freedom in Cuba, I had a place to flee to. If we lose our freedom here, where do we go? That is why each and every one of us is here today. Because we are not content to go quietly into the night. We are not willing to give up on our children and grandchildren. And I tell you this, if we continue to come together, if we stand together to defend freedom, to defend the Constitution, if we, the people, rise up as one, we can bring back that last best hope for mankind, that shining city on a hill that is the United States of America. Thank you, and God bless you.